By yourself.
Am I not good enough for you?
Absolutely.
Wow. Not really an incident.
All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to bring the October Oklahoma City Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Stacey Dumbacher.
Present.
Cathy Gardner.
Present.
John Kissinger.
Here.
Tony Romano.
Here.
And Dennis Warnick.
Here. We do not have any previous meeting minutes, so we are going to move on to administration of the oath to witnesses. So if anybody here is going to get up and speak on behalf or against any of the petitions tonight, Dawn, which is remote, will swear you in, and so you need to stand and raise your right hand, and she will swear you in.
Good evening, everybody. I'm on the screen tonight. Do you solemnly swear that any information you give this board this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
Thank you. Nathan, do we have any old business?
Not that I know of.
Right. Come on, we're going to move on to new business. We have 24-C-VAR-4. It's a Windsor Incorporated request of variance of the front yard setback and building line requirements for the construction of homes on lots 16 and 19 in Brennan's addition, Section 2B. The subject properties are Zone R1, Single Family Resident District, and located on the south side of Hawthorn Lane, just east of Brennan Street. The lots are addressed as 972, 980, 988, and 996 East Hawthorn Lane. Nathan, can we have staff report?
Sure thing. So, going to that. Okay. So this variance request tonight affects lots 16 through 19 of Brennan's addition, Section 2B. It's really hard not to make a joke about 2B. All four of which are on the south side of Hawthorn Lane, zoned R1, single family residential. Total area is about 51,000 square feet, give or take. What is being requested is to reduce, the reason for the variance is to request to reduce the grading necessary to develop lot 16 through 19. Case in point, lot 16 through 18 have about a 9.6% slope from the street back to the original grade, original topography. Lot 19 is a little different. It's fairly flat in the front, but it starts to slope up pretty fast from about the middle of the lot to the back, and has a slightly steeper slope because of that. The petitioner is seeking a setback of 25 feet for the front in order to avoid cutting more into that slope, basically trying to keep a balance between what was original and cutting it down far enough in order to meet the code required 35-foot front setback. And I'm sure the petitioner can give more information on exactly the details of all of that. So for reference, here is the overall Brennan's addition. Highlighted in blue are the subject lots. The petitioner actually owns several of the unbuilt lots in here, but these are the only 4 being requested for variances. And here is the aerial, a little closer view with the 2022 contours overlaid on top of it. And you can see these 4 lots do have a fairly steep grade, fairly significant grade from the street on back. With lot 19 on the right end, on the east end, again being a little different because the grade starts about halfway back but then slopes up fairly quickly to the southern property line. The petitioner provided this illustrative example of what one of their floor plans would look like using the 35-foot code required building line up above, and what it would look like using the 25-foot building line down below. So I took that and overlaid it on the aerial. So for reference, this is what it would look like approximately using that 35-foot existing line. And then if you switch it to 25 foot, so 35, 25. So I do actually have some suggested conditions with this variance. As you know, with conditions with variances are somewhat unusual for us, but in this case I felt it was appropriate. So I'll come back to those, but going through the review criteria, it doesn't seem like, in my opinion at least, that there would be a health or safety impact, as 25 feet is sufficient space for general health protections. It's also long enough for most vehicles to park lengthwise without overhanging the sidewalk. Most vehicles are in that less than 25 feet long. That said, and we've talked about this before, especially with the Plan Commission, so John and Dennis, the problem isn't so much the length with parking, it's the width. If you feel comfortable about parking two cars next to each other, you're more likely to park all the way forward and make use of that full 25 feet. If the driveway is, say, 16 or 18 feet wide, you don't feel comfortable parking next to each other, so you stagger and overhang on the back end. We have looked at that very carefully with Timber's Edge, and then also had a similar discussion with a couple other projects. So to that end, I would suggest a condition dealing with the width of the driveway to compensate for the shorter length. Again, definitely feel like the length would be sufficient for most vehicles, but balancing it with a wider width.
I guess for everybody's information, that 25 foot is the setback off the inside of the sidewalk, the back side of the sidewalk from the street, correct?
Correct. It is, yeah, the right of way is approximately 1 foot from the sidewalk.
Can you say that one more time? It's from the inside?
From the back side of the sidewalk from the street.
From the house side of the sidewalk?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, that's the piece thing.
Yes.
The sidewalk
Okay,
is
that helps
located
me.
in the right of way.
Right.
And it's approximately 1 foot from the sidewalk to the right of way line towards the house. And that varies a little bit.
Right.
Of course, general welfare, we do need to provide some specific practical difficulty, or else we would risk degrading our overall effectiveness of the zoning code. Use and value of the overall area. Doesn't seem like this would really affect the value of the overall area. The houses would still be the same, a difference of 10 feet. While noticeable, is still relatively in line. This is in a straight shot of Hawthorn Lane, so it is going to be somewhat noticeable, but you do have a block, and lot 19 curves because of the street there, so it does set back. So overall, it doesn't seem like there would be much impact on value. Use, however, the proposal is to reduce the amount of grading, reduce the grade, the drop-off from the properties to the south, going north. If they were code compliant, it seems like they would either have to resort to a retaining wall or a very steep grade, which would be very difficult to maintain. And that could actually wind up impacting and create additional runoff issues for the properties to the south. So it could actually wind up being a bigger impact if we tried to maintain the 35-foot requirement. But on the other hand, there may be other ways that you build a house. It doesn't have to be necessarily the way the builder is proposing. And so that would be an opposite side of things. So maybe there's another route there. Then finally, practical difficulties. The hill itself is a practical difficulty specific to these 4 lots. Definitely the western 3, the eastern one again is kind of a little different, but has some hill there. This normally, if this was developed now, we would be looking at dealing with it differently, but this was originally approved, this section in 2003. The original plat for the entire subdivision was approved in 1989. The entire subdivision under Brennan's ownership was originally contemplated apparently back in the 1960s. The road started to be graded out as of 1965. You can clearly see where the streets were then. So this definitely predates the petitioner's involvement, which they bought these lots a few months ago. But again, if this was something that was done now, we have regulations, and we would be looking at these hills in a different light, different way of grading. These are the last lots, some of the last lots left here. So it definitely feels like there is some practical difficulty. Again, though, what's done as site development versus what's done at building, there are many ways to build houses. So you could say, well, the site has some difficulties, you can still overcome them and maintain the code using alternate ways of building, retaining walls, basements, various other things. So, so again, kind of back and forth on that. And going back to the conditions, I already talked about number 1. Number 2, I would suggest that in order to compensate for the reduction in the front yard, to make sure that this is not just going to be used to create a very deep house, increase the rear setback accordingly. So increase the rear setback to 25-foot minimum in order to balance that out. So it shifts forward, not just lengthens the overall building pad. So that's the summary of the staff reports. Any questions for me at this point?
Yeah, Nathan, help me understand why we would want to say you can't just use that for housing. Is it because of, so it kind of matches the other houses, or is there another reason for that, to limit that space?
The reason I put it in there was for the matching. So it would be similar in size and so on. Bulk is, so the overall volume of a structure is something that we look at, and in order to make it similar. But if you feel like condition 2 is not appropriate, then by all means, don't take it as a suggestion.
I just wondered where you were coming from with it. Okay.
Yeah. Matching is basically my thinking.
Yeah.
I just have one question just for clarification purposes. Since this was platted as Brennan's addition, this section with this 35-foot building line, that's on the plat that was approved through the Plan Commission. Can you tell me, explain why the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to change a building line that's platted and approved by the Plan Commission?
The way we've dealt with that is the platted building line is based upon the zoning code setback. And if it was an increased line, we would know, say if it was 40 feet, then we would know it's not just a reflection of the zoning code. So that's one aspect of it. The other part of it is the Plan Commission enforces the zoning code, but you guys do too. You guys are the way to do variances. Plan Commission can't do variances. So if they wanted to come through and ask for 25-foot front setbacks back in 2003, or if this was a new subdivision, it would be handled probably up front. The variance would still go through you first, and then be platted differently. We did notify the entire section as all the property owners. got notices because it is shown on the plat. So they were all notified and have an opportunity to speak as part of the public hearing. So I feel like I'm kind of talking around it, but it's not a direct answer. It's kind of a couple different things coming together.
Anyone else have any questions for Nathan? All right, would the petitioner like to come to the podium and kind of fill us in on what Nathan hasn't and kind of your ideas on how you're going to get them houses put in there?
Sure. I'm Rob Wacker, Windsor Homes. Nathan's done a great job of covering it. There's a few things. When I bought this property, obviously I saw an opportunity to hit a price point, but also to finish a neighborhood that's I didn't realize it was 20 years ago that it was platted. I didn't realize it was that old. But any neighborhood over 5 years, if you got empty lots that are grassed over, it doesn't do anything good for the neighborhood. People drive through there, they wonder why, what's the problem, why would somebody not build in here? And I think that what I'm proposing, it helps make it economically feasible. Yes, you pointed out there are extenuating ways you can address this with a retaining wall, with a basement, neither of which is going to get it to a price point that's going to be sustainable by the neighborhood, by a 20-year-old neighborhood. I can't go in there and build $500,000 homes when I'm dealing with homes that are varied in age already. So the erosion is probably the biggest thing. These homes, and I just took one of our more popular plans as a generic set across it, but as you can see it, with the way it was intended originally, it sets the home right in the middle of the lot. Couple of points, it is much more common. Last two projects that I've been involved in have 25-foot setbacks, but in this case, dealing with the restraint here, if you're not familiar with the project, that rear 20-foot easement that you can see the line on there that goes up to Rolling Hills is about a 12-foot climb. And so over that 20 feet, there's nothing you can do in an economical sense short of cutting it to that point and rip-wrapping it, which then literally, as you can see, would put the base of that rip-wrap at the edge of your patio. Functional, yes, but not real saleable. Can still be built on. We could figure out something with it, but it wouldn't be necessarily a for sale product. The other thing that's worth noting is I don't know, Nathan, if you can pull up that one that shows the peninsula in the middle. I think you guys have a copy of it.
Are you going to be raising the houses up some too? Because you got about, some of these are 10 to 14 foot from the front of the property line to the back of the property line.
Yeah, this back at the property line, the top of Rolling Hills is about 12 foot. That's what we incurred down here. To get down to the curb, my intent is to bench these or cut these all down roughly 30 inches off the top of the curb, which is more normative for that kind of setback, to do a slab on grade foundation. It's this last 20 feet here that I can't do anything, that I have to get to that point where I have enough room for the home, and I do one of these to get up to Rolling Hills. These home sites here, with the exception of these two, which I've bought, are owned by the property owner, and I believe he sent a letter. I don't know if everyone got that, but I have copies of it. These lots here are not economically buildable. These all require pilings. There's just junk 30-some feet down. So he was able to buy all those lots with the exception of these two from the developer because for some reason they thought that these would be more saleable if lumped together with these ones across the street, like it would have a front yard to play in or something. I'm not sure. That was what I was told. So, given that these are going to remain vacant, this was really the only homeowner that had direct effect with this change in bringing it forward. And I think it's soft enough. We're building where I think this guy owns this vacant lot. We're building here, and then we run all the way down. So there's kind of a natural softening to it. I don't think visually you're going to see that transition to a 10-foot. But in the backyard, it would make a heck of a difference for those people that have to live with it. These we actually, because the proximity to Blue River, and although we cleared trees through here, you can't, there's limits as to how close you can get to that. So this wasn't going to change, so we actually pocketed those into the hill. Well, one's up, one's going to be up. And then we'll transition down to those others, and 15 in front now has a basement and naturally falls down to 14 as well. That helps.
So you said you're the house, basically the finished floor of the house will be 30 inches above the curb?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be my pad height. So that on a normal, that would give a normal driveway like you're seeing out there.
Small slope into the garage.
Yeah. Nobody likes heavy slopes in their driveway either, so avoid that. And I have a, excuse me, right now, if you go out there, there's, I guess for the benefit of anyone who may not know the situation, we have dirt piled in here. There were a lot of trees that came out of here to create those pads. That has all been trucked off, but there is additional dirt because there is a slope on it now. Rather than cut it flat now and have it hold water until we're ready to actually make it work, cut swales in. It's all got a gentle slope to it. So there's more dirt that's going to come out of here, and then we'll be evenly spread and graded across here, with the exception of a question in one area of question that we're having a surveyor take a look at to see if it is. You can see the spot up in the right-hand corner that technically on your flood maps actually shows, even though everything around it is all built up and it's been removed. So we're determining first before we spread that dirt if that is in fact correct on the flood maps, in which case we would be going around it. Regardless, I'd be sculpturing it so it looks complete, and we would be seeding it. And actually those two lots on the corner that I pointed to that I own, I would be deeding to the fella that owns the balance of those home sites on that peninsula. So we'd be building on 9 of the 11 lots. They're all taking a little bit of effort. There's a reason that they've been left behind, and at this point, it makes economic sense. Any questions for me?
I have a few.
Yeah.
First, in looking at the property prior to purchasing it, did you go through those lots and double check that? Did you, being a builder and you've done a lot, Windsor's been in business a long time, did you walk the lots and because you had to have seen what kind of issues you
Oh,
were
yeah.
going to come
Yeah.
across then,
Yeah.
prior to purchasing them.
No question. My intent from day one was knowing that I was going to have to clear cut that I was going to have issues with utilities up at the lot line, visual issues, but also grading issues, and that I would be benching those down. And there's actually a home across, and forgive I don't know my directions, but if you look up toward the ceiling, there's a home across the way that several homes that have a hill behind them as well, and there's a couple of them, I believe, that have what I'm describing, where they graded it as soft as they could, but it's still too steep to mow, and they have riprap along the back side, and they've done some really pleasant things aesthetically to it, bringing grass up around the top of it that they actually mow. This is a little steeper than that, but yes, to answer your question, I knew that I'd have a sharp incline there that I'd have to riprap, and it was just a question of what I can put on there. I mean, I can put homes on there and meet the restrictions. Can I put the best home for the neighborhood on there, the most saleable home for the neighborhood, and without a backyard? It could become a rental. Sure, it can fit a home, but it would not be my goal. I'd like to finish it out in like kind with what's around it.
Well, I was looking at that floor plan here, and I'm not sure what your side yard, like your projected side yard setbacks are for the home that you're, kind of have shown here on your drawing. If in fact you would be able to put in more of a rectangular home as opposed to the square, just, very generically said, on those lots in order to meet the setback requirement, thus pulling the house, farther to the north, getting it away from the south line. I was out there a couple of different times, actually walked the property too, because those steep slope in the back, that you sure hope we don't get any torrential rains where Park Terrace becomes a part of these lots, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
It's kind of a hot topic right now.
yeah, but I'm just seeing if that's, if that's even an option, to change a floor plan, and you can get, I'm sure, a very nice looking home, that's more of a rectangular shape to meet that. I'm just throwing that out there as to if that was a thought.
Yeah, and that's actually what I'm building. But if you look at most of your smaller single stories, the garage becomes somewhat of an appendage. Yes, you can build a garage on the side. These are wider lots, but then you end up with more of a double wide type look, and that's not necessarily what I find to be saleable right now. This is overall depth is going to be similar to what we're doing now, and that's it's roughly a 1,500 square foot home. I think the one we have on, the ones on 15 is roughly 1,500 on a basement with 3-car, but that one I did because of dirt issues, not really the price point that I wanted to get to.
How deep is these generic footprints as far as like from the front of the garage? Because obviously the garage does stick. The garage is really what you're kind of after. The garage sticks out an extra 10 feet.
Yeah, I think these are 50 feet, and if I have, and we've done some testing in there. I'm not even sure that they developed pads per se for these. I'm creating my own pad just because I'm getting into virgin ground. But even with that, we are testing it because 15 was a mess. A lot of stuff was buried in there to the point where we actually excavated the whole of the garage space as well, 700 and some odd square feet, and rolled it back in with clay in order to get it. buildable. So it's already adding costs, which is an issue as far as getting it, making it saleable. But I can build something either. My concern is we're gonna have drainage issues. If I step off, either I don't do the patio and I cut a deep swale across the backyard and bring it around the front of the house, or I give it an extra 10 feet so I can shallow off that swale and make it work, make it function better.
I'm assuming these are 3-bedroom homes.
You said you had a couple of questions, and I
Yeah.
answered the one.
Yeah, you
Did
got
we
it.
satisfy everything? Okay.
Probably to raise the house anymore from the elevation of 30 inches just creates more of a harsh slope in the front.
Yeah, it becomes a balancing act on a lot that has that much change. You know, the kids want to be able to play basketball out in the front. And Nathan's point, I hadn't crossed my mind, but on that rear, bringing that rear setback out to, I think, from 20 to 25, I think makes great sense. I mean, it defeats my purpose to move anything closer to that line, even hugging that line, so I have no issue with moving it further away. They're wider lots than we're dealing with today, by and large. So there is that ability to spread it widthwise. In fact, it creates a better streetscape when you have a wider home. They look bigger, and it would be more in keeping with what's there currently. The goal is just to get it finished so that it looks like it's a completed neighborhood. If I had my druthers, I'd ask you to do something on that peninsula and run a sidewalk through and make that look more like a park area. But I think that actually the neighbors is trying to see what he can do to at least vacate the boxes, because the power company has said they're not going to be in use, and I don't know the terminology honestly, but seem to be able to get away from the structures to where it doesn't, and it no longer looks like a developed lot that's supposed to be built on. Now it just looks like a groomed common area, which I think is the best thing for the neighborhood. It's a great spot.
All right, I don't have anybody else has questions for the petitioner?
All right, thanks
All right,
much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on behalf of the petitioner? Please come to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Keith Roman, 915 East Jefferson. Just to the south of that green line there. Well, imagine my shock coming home one afternoon and here's my beautiful woods being taken away, but there's no birds at the feeders anymore. There's no animals trying to steal my garden stuff. But I had to reconcile with it. I live in a wood house. It used to be wood, and it used to be Indian land, so what can I say? Progress is progress. There's just something intangible. I look behind me and the soul of the place is gone. And that's something you can't really put a value on. So it makes me wonder, when we moved in there, we looked at that slope, we looked at those woods. I said, that's too narrow to put a house on. And that slope is crazy. Why would anybody build there? Well, I guess we found somebody that's crazy enough to build there. So, I just wonder if this variance was the plan all along or not. You know, go ahead and build your houses and you do what you gotta do. But the thing I'm worried about is drainage. The guy that owns the vacant lot to the west there tells me that whole area behind there floods every spring because that common drain. And now you've taken the woods away, and now you're gonna put houses and wide driveways on there. And now there's a big slope behind my house. Where's all that water gonna go? The other thing is, that slope. I'm just worried about the stones and stuff. Are weeds gonna go through it? How steep is it gonna be? Would a retaining wall be better? All these issues. I just hope all these things are addressed.
One for drainage will definitely be addressed. That's kind of one of the big things that the city's always looking at, for sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Kim Coverstone, 944 Hawthorn Lane. I'll show you where we're at. This is our house, and we own the lot beside it.
Okay.
We just sort of feel that those houses sticking 10 feet forward are going to stick out like a sore thumb. When you come down Hawthorn, it will be noticeable. And as he stated, he knew this condition. He knew the lay of the land. When he says people wondered why there are empty lots, no one wondered why these were empty. It was the woods. It was the woods. He came in and tore the woods down, did all this, and now he wants you to bail him out. That's exactly what's going on here. Came in, bought the lots, knowing the lay of the land. He's a professional. He does this all the time. He knows. Came in, tore the trees down, graded it, and he's saying, you guys bail me out. Because he knows if you don't move those houses 10 feet closer, no one's going to buy them. No backyard. You're going to step out your back door, take 2 steps, and you got a slope. He knows that. The first house he built is set back 35 feet. And he's got about 12 feet to the slope behind his house. So that's what's happening here. He has every right to buy the land, but he knew that these houses wouldn't fit on there. Then he talked about is it a retention wall or
Retention wall.
Okay, yeah. There's covenants of Brennan's addition. You cannot have a wall over 5 foot tall. Unless they've changed them, but that's what's still online. I just checked it. 5 foot wall is not going to cut it. So he can talk about a retaining wall all he wants, but he's got to follow the covenants. Also, we were told, I haven't found this yet, there's a thing we got to have 250 foot of brick on your house. The houses they put up don't have 250 foot of brick. The first house he built, right beside my lot, they're building on top of a stormwater drain this big around. They ripped the top off of it. They were gonna fill it in. We stopped them for a little bit. We had to call the city out. Mike Shota came out. He said, I don't know if it's retired or if it's still a good one. They were supposed to run a camera in it and find out. Well, the workers there didn't know. So finally, some other guy came out. From Windsor. He tells me, we're confident. It's retired. We're in the process of getting the legal work, the legal paperwork. I said, you're in the process of getting the legal paperwork? You're filling it in now. Yeah, we're confident about this. So Mike Shota did call Wygents and they did check it. It just never got back. It was a retired one. But you think they're going to tell those people that buy that house that their house is on top of a storm sewer drain that got filled in? Because if they didn't fill it in all the way, that collapses, you got a problem. But back to the main issue here is he knew the lay of the land. He's a professional, does this all the time. Came in, no one questioned why those lots were empty. It was the woods, solid woods. And he tore the woods down, graded it, and he's wanting you guys to bail them out. That's exactly what's happening. So myself and my wife, we're against this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on behalf of the petitioner or against petitioner?
My name is Jim Swanson. I live on 993 East Deer Path. I'm the last house east on Deer Path.
Okay.
One of my concerns is at times in the Hawthorn Edition, parking is a problem. At times they will park on both sides of the road, and it's almost impossible to get a vehicle through. If there's like an emergency fire truck had to get through, they wouldn't be able to get through. So my question is that with limited parking on these new additions, is there going to be more of a parking problem because they'll be parking on both sides of the road?
Well, if we make the drives wider, they'll be able to easily park two vehicles in the drive, and that's not taking into consideration what they're going to park in the garage. So I would say if it's a single family home, any excess cars is going to be their neighbors visiting, or I'm just assuming. There shouldn't be any reason if they got a 2-car garage and they can park 2 vehicles in their driveway. That's 4 vehicles. I don't see where they would have any more than that.
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, everybody's got a garage, but not everybody uses a garage. They got it filled up with other stuff. And so they got 3, 4, 5 vehicles sometimes, and they park both sides of the road.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't control, and that's something that nobody can control, regardless if that drives.
But the thing of it is,
35 or 25 feet long.
If it's going to be limited parking on the new houses, what's that going to create? More parking on the road itself.
Well, the house you're only going to get. I mean, yes, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, but the skinnier, longer drive is going to take 2 vehicles. You can't get 2 vehicles end to end on a 35-foot drive without getting into the sidewalk, I would assume.
Right. If you assume a 18-foot long car, which is nominal size, that's 36 feet. So on a 35-foot drive, you'd be
in it anyhow. So,
yeah.
So if we make them wider, it makes for better, easier parking for 2 vehicles. You're not going to lose parking space in the shorter distance.
So you're saying that you can get 4 vehicles on the?
No, you get 2. And
Well,
if you're getting a 2-car garage,
on my house, I can get 4 vehicles.
you got more than 35 feet then. Or you're into the sidewalk.
No, I'm not in the sidewalk.
My truck's 22.5 feet long, so 36-foot drive ain't gonna do me any good anyhow. So, I mean, I don't see the parking issue any excess vehicles on the street, you're gonna have that regardless of, you're gonna have that regardless if your drive's 35 feet long and 18 feet wide, or 25 feet long and 20, or if we make it 22 wide. You're not gaining or losing parking spaces with the two different lengths. So that even if the house is, we don't comply to his request, that's not gonna change the amount of parking spaces that's gonna be available to those homes. Does that make sense to you?
To me, potentially it could be a problem, the way I look at it, because they can start parking on both sides of the road. And I mean, obviously it depends how many vehicles is gonna go in that one particular, homestead. I mean,
Right.
it could be a.
The only way you control that is if you didn't build any houses there at all. But I see your concern. We'll take that into consideration.
Okay.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on behalf of the petition? Please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Tom Ryan, 402 Brennan Street. I live on the corner north of, well, in that north corner. And my concern is also with Jim's, you know, yes, there are, you know, there's garage space, but a lot of people don't put their cars in the garage. They have their stuff in it on a Saturday, or, may I?
Sure.
We can look out my front door here, and there will be cars parked on both sides of these streets. Yesterday, coming home this way, 30% of these homes that are existing, they had their cars parked in the driveway, which told me their garages are packed. And, you know, I too just share a concern about being able to get an emergency vehicle through there when cars are staggered, or, yeah, it's just.
Okay, so it's already a problem with
On-
existing houses that you
On
already have.
your path, yes, and I can see it happening over there.
And even though they're not planning to develop the other side, so there's a little bit more space over there.
I'm sorry?
They're not planning to develop across from the houses he's speaking of.
That's true, yes.
So there is maybe a little bit more there that might have a little bit more freedom.
Perhaps, yes.
Okay.
And also with the shorter drive, you know, you're right, you know, your truck you said was 14 feet?
22 and a half feet.
Yeah, 22 and a half feet, so you've got two cars back to back, which I've seen, you know, you're gonna be hanging out over the sidewalk.
Yeah, even the 36-foot drive, I mean, unless you shove the bumper drive against the bumper in front of you, you're not gonna get two cars in a 35-foot driveway and not be into that sidewalk area where.
Well, my wife's car is 14 feet, she has a Escape, and, you know, that's only 28. So
if you had a Volkswagen.
I guess not everybody has, you know, I drive a Subaru Legacy.
Well, it sounds to me like there's, in the addition, there's a covenants of what you can do and what you can't do. I would think that the housing addition could, would be doing something about the excess cars if they're parking clear out into these in front of these lots where there's no homes at all, and you're saying it gets congested out when you look out your driveway. I mean, so you're saying there's cars parked.
Oh, it's not congested in front of my place.
No, but all along that street, you said that there was
all
cars.
along Deer Path, yes.
So they're parking in front of lots that don't have any homes at all.
Some of that would be
Some
the
of that
property
is.
owners association that.
I don't know if there is a property. I don't know if there is a property owners association.
If there's covenants, I would thought there would have been.
Joe Brennan, they live in Colorado.
I think he's the only living Brennan left.
Nathan, these streets when created in this subdivision were created to meet the city's specifications for street specifications, so, and then the streets are now owned by the city, correct? They're not owned by the actual development.
Correct, they are public streets.
They are public streets, so yeah, so there isn't anything that their association or their neighborhood could do about people parking on the street.
Other than ask the city to do something about it.
And obviously the streets were developed for houses on every one of those lots.
We live in a subdivision within the city, and there's parking on both sides of the street, and it becomes quite a nightmare. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're trying to drive, you have to stay over when someone's coming your way, and that happens.
Jefferson's like that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the board's invitation and giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on behalf or against the petition? Hearing none, I'm going to close the floor and open it to board discussion.
I guess my only comment is the few questions that I asked were very important, as far as the fact that the builder did in fact know about these lots prior to purchasing them. I don't feel comfortable myself, if I may say, granting a variance for them to build back farther than what the building line that was established by the development. You know, it's been put in place. So I've kind of stated that before in different other situations with variances. You know, these lots are established. They're established with building lines, utility easements, and setbacks. I don't have a problem dealing with, you know, variances of the setback requirements of the ordinance. But when you get into utility easements and you get into building lines, I'm really concerned about that. Again, I walked that property, and the slope's terrible. You know, it really is. And I mean, I walk back there and I'm like, oh my word. You know, you move them up and you give people more backyards. It's unfortunate, and I hate to say this at a public hearing, but people don't care anymore. And so I don't feel like giving them extra room benefits them. Sometimes I just don't think people care about taking care of their properties like they used to. That's a concern that I have. There again, I think, you know, building a very nice home that meets the setback requirements and can fit on the building line, I think it can be done. So I'm not a builder, but I
got a
have a little
question
experience with that.
for the petitioner. Have you ever thought about, like, stepping the back of the house up like they used to do, like a tri-level, or not really? You're not really. So the front of it would be at one level, and then you go up 4 or 5 steps into
Bi-level.
yeah, like a bi-level to help.
Yeah, what we're running into, I mean, had you asked me 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the answer might be different. But we have, with our aging society, I probably used to build 80-90% 2-stories and stairs everywhere, and that's almost an exact inverse at this point. If I am speculating, it's going to be all on one level because it meets the aging demographic, it meets the younger crowd, it's just a wider market. But we're just not building a lot of multi-story right now. I can do it within there. And so I'm not asking for a bailout. I knew exactly what I was getting into. It's in looking at it and recognizing that 25-foot setback still puts you, 37 feet off the road. There's not going to be an aesthetic negative to this, and there's I think we'd be better served from a traffic congestion standpoint to get the people off of the road, the baby carriages that are walking the roads, and get them onto public sidewalks by getting these homes completed and getting a contiguous path around this neighborhood so it looks finished. And that's my safety concern, is people don't use the sidewalks because they're segmented and have been for 20 years.
So one of my things too, Cathy, was when you bought it, you knew it. So was the whole intent once you bought this is I'm going to go for this variance? Did
No.
you have another plan?
No.
Was it just something you didn't think about? I'm just trying to understand.
No,
Some pieces still
yeah, it's a
bother
valid
me, to
question.
be honest.
No, that I had a plan. It worked. As I got into it, obviously we did clearing, and I empathize for those people that are used to having the woods. I've been in that position myself. It is a platted neighborhood. It was meant to be built on. Those woods are going to be cleared. It's just we get used to things being a certain way, and we don't like change. So I empathize with that. In this case, no. As things progressed, and you cleared the trees, and you start to look at it and go, this is going to be really steep, and it's going to be right at your back door. 35 foot is not normative today. And with placing the house right in the middle of the lot, candidly, I looked at it as there's nothing across from it, so there's nothing that would really be a deterrent, and it would really improve somebody's lifestyle by giving them a little bit more backyard. The drainage is going to be steep. I can make it work. I'm not. It's going to have to be economic trade-offs, and if there's not a buyer, there's a renter. So my overreaching was I can get a house on there. It's just as I've looked at it further, I think for the neighborhood, I can make it look a whole lot better with what I'm suggesting.
Hey, did we have some of the newer housing additions? What's the setbacks on those?
It depends on what the zoning is. So our R3 district has a 25-foot setback. For example, Timber's Edge, which is the second newest approved subdivision, is mostly zoned R3, but the Plan Commission requested a mix of setbacks there for various reasons as part of that rezoning. East end of Hanna.
What's the one there on the south of the tracks on 109? Turns into 205. That housing, that second edition on that one.
Cambridge Crossing, is
that King?
Wait, south of the tracks?
South of the tracks.
That would be Oakdale Ridge. Across from the Humane Society?
Yes.
Okay, that's Oakdale. I'll have to look.
That's fairly new expansion, isn't it?
It was approved quite a while ago. The newest section is new, but there was a long lapse between
phase 1 and phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
I assume this is all R1.
This is all R1. And again, R2, just in case anybody needs a refresher, front setbacks in R2 is 30 feet. So you have 35 foot, 30, and 25 as our standard.
And are we aware of anything in these houses that are existing that are already non-conforming or got a variance or don't meet the standard for some reason or other?
There were 2 variances granted for Brennan's addition. One was a side yard variance to allow for a 3-car garage, and another was for a front yard variance to allow for, I believe, a 29 and a half foot front yard.
I'm sorry, sir. We have I've closed the floor.
So there were 2 variances already in Brennan's addition. The one that was for the 29 and a half foot front yard was due to misplaced survey stakes, so the house was actually built
Oh,
roughly 6 feet in front of where we're supposed to be. So.
ouch. Okay.
They may move it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion on 24-C-VAR-4 to approve the variance with the conditions stated.
I have a motion from Dennis on behalf of this petitioner. All in favor, raise the right hand.
Second.
Need a second.
I need a second.
And so are we going to include that variance of 20?
Yes.
25.
25. 25.
The driveway width.
20 foot
20
driveway.
20 foot driveway.
Both
Yes.
of those.
Yes. So I have a motion from Dennis. Do I have a second? I do not have a second. Does anybody have any more discussion they'd like to? Tony, you have what's your thoughts?
I'm kind of with Cathy on that one. I think those were put in. They're put in for a reason. Everybody else followed those. Yeah, it's questionable whether it's an improvement to, for the neighborhood one way or the other to have it back or forward. To be honest.
Well, yeah, I get that.
I think it's
Unfortunately, though,
a challenge, but
some of the concerns are, I don't want to call them complaints, but you get used to all the woods and that.
The
but
woods thing, you cannot.
you can't control it because you don't know.
No, you don't own it.
If you own it,
You have no.
then
You have no. I'm not using that by any means, because that's my biggest complaint. Is people can do what they want with their own yards within the rules. I can see some minor, like, if we were gonna say, okay, hey, I'm 3 foot off or 5 foot off or something,
right.
I would feel a little better about it. But like we're saying, no, I'm gonna move it, full 10 feet up. And it just, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here. If a lot of other houses in the neighborhood and there's a lot of variance and how all these were set up and stuff, aesthetically, I think that's where I kind of go, well,
Okay. That's fine. So we had a motion. Do we have a different motion?
I make a motion that we deny 24-C-VAR-4.
Okay, I have a second motion by Cathy. I have a motion by Cathy on this. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second by Stacey. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Passes. 3-2. All right, Nathan.
Okay.
Makes your challenges a little more.
I'll work with it. Thanks for your time.
You bet.
That's a good question.
All right, we're gonna move on to the second order of new business today. It's 24-C-SC-4. Giving Gardens of Indiana Incorporated requests approval of a special exception for an additional facility proposed to be located on 479 South Towerview Drive. The 2.57 acre property is zoned R1 Single Family Residential District and located on the northeast corner of Hanna Street and Towerview Drive. Would the petitioner please come to the podium?
All that.
Oh, I gotta hurry. Sorry. Nathan, can you give us the staff report?
I don't know if I want to now. Okay, I'll make it quick though. So this is, you've seen this before a couple times. 479 South Towerview Drive. Overall property is zoned R1 single family and I1 light industrial. The area in question tonight is zoned R1. Overall property acreage is a little over 6.5. What is requested is special exception for educational facility. Originally approved in 2021 and 2022. Acreage was added to make the 6.5 acres. What is proposed tonight is to place a 16 by 60 modular classroom on the site to provide for a enclosed area for classrooms. It's not the, as you may recall, with the original approval, it's not the permanent building. This is a interim solution, and the petitioner didn't give some more details on timing, but this was not intended to be a permanent fixture. And whenever that permanent building is built, development plan would be required, and this would be removed off the site. Location would be south of the existing greenhouse, and in addition to this, they are proposing to pave some of the parking for ADA accessibility. Overall, though, nothing else would change. The gravel driveway would still remain, and as was originally approved with the original special exception. Going through reference materials real quick, here's the overall site. Hanna Street is along east-west along the bottom. Short Street is the street heading off to the west. Towerview through the middle. Closer view, the rectangular building there in the center is the greenhouse. A couple different pavilions and other outbuildings that have been placed on the property. The petitioners submitted site plan. The building in question is this structure, which is also the floor plan here.
Name and address and fill in our missing questions.
Yes, Rachel Alexander. I'm the executive director for Giving Gardens. My personal address,
Yes, please.
6432 South Appaloosa Drive.
Thank you.
So for as far as permanent structure, really the only area on that property would be the northeast corner. As far as a permanent structure would go. I don't know that we are against putting the permanent structure where the current, where we're proposing the modular would be. I'm pretty adaptable. So if there's a preference when we're creating our site development plan, I'm open for suggestions.
So when you say northeast, you're talking about just north of where the driveway loop is, right?
Yes, yeah. And maybe it would be some kind of an L type structure, I don't know, so we could utilize more of that property. We just are not even that far. We just haven't even been thinking that yet, as far as what the design of that would look like. So, and as we grow, really what we would need the building to offer. So.
Can you tell me I don't know what you guys do. Can you briefly summarize that?
Yes, so we start.
You had talked about a lot of your people are students under 16. So what relationship would that satisfy?
Yes. So we started out as a community garden, and then we started getting approached by places like Troy School and the Bowen Center to bring kids to learn where food comes from. And so then we grew programming from there. So really we just offer enrichment programming. We serve mostly homeschool families. We do have a program with Troy School. They bring their middle and high school kids every week through the school year. And then we have summer camps in the summertime where we serve more public school kids. On average, we have about 75 kids there a week. So, and we are, we act as a forest school where the kids are outside year round. Our programs are between 3 and 5 hours long. So we do utilize Morch's Park at times and then the lower property back towards Brent Bachman's property. So And what was your other question? Oh.
You answered both of them.
Oh, okay. So the modular, so the state of Indiana, when you guys approved for the open air pavilion to be placed, when we went through the design with the state, they required that we have bathrooms on site, and they gave us a deadline of December 31st of this year. And then in January of this year, the Community Foundation of Whitley County approached us about writing our organization into Gift 8. I don't know if you're familiar with its community improvement. And they knew about our bathroom deadlines, and so they approached us, wanted to write us into that. So we worked with Drew Wellborn from Whitley Manufacturing. He agreed to donate the shell of a modular, and then that value would be written into a grant. So the Community Foundation has given us $50,000 for the interior of the modular to be done. So Whitley Manufacturing is shipping the modular to Whitco Career Academy, and then their construction trade students would do the interior for us, and then ship it back. And then, we would obviously use licensed contractors to make sure that everything we will need to tie into city sewer, and we will obviously increase our electrical use. But I mean, really, the idea isn't to make it so comfy inside that we want to hold classes in there. We want the kids to be outside. It's to give us a bathroom on site, and we wouldn't have to cancel classes for inclement weather. If a storm rolls in, or on really cold or really hot days, we could go in at times to cool down or warm up and then go back outside. So, and we would have a small working kitchen in there, because we do teach the kids how to cook with vegetables.
Thank you.
I guess I don't care either way. I was just curious, the location there versus your more permanent location. Like, I mean, again, I don't care necessarily either way. I'm just curious why.
So we don't have. So when we first started as community garden, and we were growing like market gardening style, where we were growing food and taking it to farmers market. We are not doing that anymore. We use the produce mostly with our kids in the programs. And so we're kind of scaling down those outside garden beds. And so the point was to put it there, because we're not going to utilize that area with the garden beds anymore. And then Roselle Lawn and Landscape will be brought in to design that area with some, I think maybe some grass he proposed, and some native plants that are, wouldn't be invasive and that the kids could learn from. So, and then we also have like a fruit guild. So in between the modular and Hanna Street, we have a row of fruit trees that we've kind of held up. And so we figured too, I mean, I understand that a modular is not the ideal building. It's not like it's going to look as nice as what a really great building would look like. So kind of then to, just so it's also not right out in the open. So.
Very good. Does anyone else have any questions for the petition? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else here in the audience that'd like to speak on behalf of the petitioner? Is there anyone out there who would like to speak against petitioner? State your name and address.
My name is James Strauss. I live at 754 Thornapple Court. If you go up Thornapple Court, it's the third house.
Okay.
So when she talks about doing a permanent structure, I'm concerned that permanent structure will end up being right behind my house. I'm going to do a little history lesson for you, because in '98, when I built this house, that was a little wetlands back there. There were trees, there were ducks, and it was a beautiful place to build a home. I don't object to the Giving Garden. I understand its purpose, but part of my issue is they mow their grass whenever they feel like it. Sometimes it gets really, really high. I noticed today it was really nicely cut, because I'm assuming bigger people would come out and take a look at it. As far as the modular, I'm concerned about the modular the way that she just explained it. Is Whitley Manufacturing putting this together?
Yeah, they would donate the shell of the modular.
Okay, are they also giving you the Indiana safety seal for that modular?
They do all the title work.
Because here's the issue, and this may help you out, okay? If a modular unit is built in Indiana, it has to have a safety seal on it. Okay, if it doesn't have that safety seal on it, it cannot be put anywhere in the state of Indiana.
So I would assume he provides that if that's what he does, right?
Hopefully.
I
I want you to keep it.
Okay,
I will give
thank
this
you,
to you.
I will definitely.
I want you to
make sure
keep that in mind,
happens.
because in my previous profession, working for the Indiana State Fire Marshal's Office, which is now the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, part of my job was going to these manufactured plants and inspecting these modular classrooms. Now, this is going to be a relatively new one.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Are you familiar with Whitley Manufacturing? Are you familiar with Whitley Manufacturing?
I have never.
Because they build units to go all over the United States.
I know.
We actually did one in down in Knoxville, Tennessee. And,
well, but the rules are like this, okay? If it's built in Indiana and it leaves Indiana, it doesn't get inspected in Indiana.
But I'm sure if they're building for Indiana,
well,
they're putting a stamp on it.
But they're getting the shell and then it's going someplace else and someone else is doing the interior work.
Would the building department not require that be there, Nathan, or would Craig go out to inspect?
We would, and that's what I believe Jim is telling you to watch out for, to make sure you get that before we tell you need it, it becomes hard to retrofit.
Yeah, because if it's not inspected sometime along the spectrum of when it's being built, then Indiana's going to ask you to take out part of your drywall so they can look at the wiring, take out part of your floor so they can look at the plumbing. So this may help you out, ma'am. I'm not here to.
I will definitely double check with them to make sure that they're following those steps along the process.
I'm not here to say no. Okay. If it's a new unit, great. It's going to look a lot better than something that's been out at a school for 10, 20 years and then drug across town to be put here.
High school.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ones up at the high school were like really nasty. Because again, my old profession, I inspected the high school and had to inspect the modulars, and toward the end they were pretty dilapidated. But
so you said that school is actually going to build the interiors?
Yes, they will. They will do the interior.
Because I know we've worked with different schools, and everyone we ever worked with all go through that process of local inspections. Inspectors actually work with the kids, or when they do an inspection, they actually just don't go in and look at it and say, okay, you did it right, tag it. They actually explain why things are the way they are and what they're trying, so that the inspector's actually helping the.
If they're taking out some of this green bed stuff up there front where they're going to put this, it'll probably make the property look a little better than what it does now. I mean, those boxes, I don't care, okay, one way or another. My only thought process here is, in '98 when we built this, it was beautiful back there. The city came in when they did their water sewage transform, and they dumped all of their used, basically, crap back there. There were big rocks that had rebar sticking out of them. And the ground wasn't really suitable to build on. But my only concern is I'd like to see it kept up a little better. Because sometimes, I get up every morning, I'll let my dogs out. We put up our 6-foot privacy fence long before these folks moved in. I didn't want to make it sound like we put up the privacy fence just because you moved in there. But when the kids are out in the summer playing, and you can't tell kids to be quiet, the dogs just go nuts in the backyard. There's nothing that can be done about that. I would just like your property to be a little bit better kept.
So we just did hire Hodges.
Right.
Clark Hodges, his property management. We hired a different company this summer, Red Acres. We were not at all happy with his efforts to keep
because
the property
below the grade and all that down there still pretty well grown up. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the city told us that we didn't have to do anything with that. We talked about mowing some, honestly, initially I wanted to put in a prairie and so that there were flowers, but our board has adopted a no spray policy, and every place I've brought in says we have to spray to kill all of the invasives, and then we would seed, and so that's not an option. We talked about planting trees so it would become forest again. That also would help with, water going back to that marsh area on top of
because like our one and only tree back there is buried about 20 feet. That one lonely tree that sits toward the north of the property, when that all sloped down, because there was a deep slope to that, when they came in and they leveled the ground out there, that tree was buried about 20 feet.
You're saying
that used to be a bigger tree there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we are trying to plant many trees.
Well, I mean, I'm okay with the location. I mean, it's.
But yes, Thor is going to keep it up on the property much better.
Okay.
So yes, our board did just vote to hire him to do that. So.
No,
and he's very, his name, if his name is on it, he wants it to look nice, and I appreciate that as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was my only concern, because I mean, I can call it an eyesore the way it sits right now, but what I see as an eyesore, someone else doesn't see as an eyesore. When I look at the back of your greenhouse, and the door is blowing in and out, and it sometimes they don't latch it.
Well, if they're opening it to let air through, but it's not like the hinges aren't correct.
If you're going to keep it up better, I'm okay with it.
So I would love to meet you at the property, because neighbors' opinions matter to us, and I would love to walk around with you and have you point out places that you think need improvement. I would be more than happy to take all that into consideration. We want it to be beautiful, and we want the community to want to come and utilize the property even when we're not there. So if you're ever interested in that,
I didn't realize that there was a deadline on having a restroom out there. That was interesting when you talked about that. I'm probably a little bit more in favor of your building now than I was when I got the letter, but my only concern is let's make it look better.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else here that'd like to speak on behalf against the petitioner? Hearing none, I close the floor and open it for board discussion or motion.
Nathan, I have a couple of questions. One question is, was Craig made aware of this? I mean, has he reviewed anything or talked to Rachel? Was he directed?
Yes.
He has. Okay, so he's aware of this, and okay, good. Just the building inspector, which is great. So, okay.
To answer your previous question, though, here is the list of conditions from the previous approval. So one was in 2021. It was for the then initial structure, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are what I'm suggesting be reaffirmed with this special exception. That the parking be the parking layout plan be part of. You guys probably can't see that very well, can you?
Yeah, I can.
That's better.
There, is that better?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the development plan, which would be required for the permanent building, that's when all the parking would be looked at. Same thing with the gravel situation. Hours of operation would be 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Signage, 5 and 6 are standard lighting and signage conditions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. And I guess my only comment too is I've been by the property a couple times, and obviously when I was there earlier this morning, Rachel, Thor hadn't got there to mow yet, because that was my concern too. That the property didn't look like it had been mowed for quite a while, and also to the area, the area that you're going to be putting the modular classroom was in an area that was pretty overgrown.
Yes,
So,
yes, and that was supposed to be brush hogged over the weekend to prepare for site work, and, the contractor has not made it happen.
okay, so,
I can only-
and I guess, having a manufactured unit sitting there, kind of can make you kind of think negative again. I appreciate Jim's comments here too, and obviously no one else is concerned about that in that particular area of Columbia City. So, I too agree that if the property is well maintained, I think that then the unit sitting there will fit in much better. So, and I
You
do
guys can work
appreciate what you
together
do.
on getting some trees in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think there's like a water pipe that runs under part of that property, because there is a drainage up here in the one corner, and it runs back toward that, where that one small tree, where the one tree is now. I think that's where it ran across, so I don't think that's gonna affect where you're building, it may affect where you wanna try to put your permanent structure though.
So we actually, the city's had an environmental study done on our property, phase 1 and 2. And they didn't find anything buried, that was out of the norm, I suppose. I do have a copy of the environmental study, results, and there were very elevated levels of lead, which they said were, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say very elevated. It was very minimal. It was just over the threshold. And in the report, it said that it was from natural sediment. And the mayor and Marcia McNaghy just asked us, they gave us 2 options. They said any site work that you would do, dirt has to remain on the property. If not, you have to pay a couple $1,000s to have this
Remediated.
Yes, and then that only lasts for 1 year. So just for assurances, also that all of any existing dirt we would move around would stay on our property.
Alrighty. Anybody else have any questions for Nathan or the petitioner?
So as far as the 6 years from the date of approval, are you still thinking that you're gonna need that long? or-
Maybe. I wish I could say, no, I don't think we need that long. Having this module in place will allow us to extend the hours of our programming, which would increase our revenue and get us more, towards, working towards that. I should also say that, our property goes down and kind of around this corner. Brent Bockelman owns 20 acres of marsh back there. He has offered us first right of refusal to purchase that. We have trails, we were already using it. He's allowed us to use it for several years. That kind of pushes it up on our priority list of things to tackle as far as our goals go, because we certainly wouldn't want him to sell it out from under us. That probably will be our fundraising goal for this next year, and then after that we would start working towards the permanent building. So.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else have any questions, or somebody have a motion?
I'll motion to approve. Conditions laid out.
I have a motion from Tony. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Stacey. All those in favor raise their right hand. Opposed? So move. Thank you. Nathan, we got any other business tonight
Yeah,
besides the calendar?
just the calendar. So let me bring that over for your reference, since what went out was the plan commission part of it. So those are your dates. Again, let me zoom in on that.
Are you just gonna send us an updated one?
Yeah, we'll send you an
Okay.
updated one, but since it's on the agenda, I'm going to talk about it.
Go ahead.
So the dates are those. None of the dates are not the first Tuesday of the month this time. We don't have election days or anything like that getting in the way. So we'll get you this in a more formal version later, but so here you go. Importantly, the training sessions for 2025 are going to be March 31st, June 30th, September 29th, and if we don't have good participation at the first three, we'll have one on December 29th. No, we're going to cancel that one, despite there being a fifth Monday in December, just like we are for 2024. So for this year, 3 next year. I haven't looked at 2026 yet, but it'll be 3, 4, or 5. Just depends. So, yeah, weird talking about that already. So if you want to have consensus on this, you can, or if you want to kind of hold off until you've had a chance to more digest the dates, however you want to handle it.
Do we motion this one?
Sometimes we do, sometimes it's just by consensus. So
All good for me.
All good for me.
we'll treat that
I'll
as
either be here or I won't be here.
One of the two.
One of the two. Yeah, 50-50.
if we have to call special meetings, we will. So the only other thing to mention is last night's comprehensive plan workshop, I think is what I termed it. Had pretty good turnout. South Whitley, unfortunately, didn't have anybody turn out. Dennis was the only representative from your board.
Thank you,
but
Dennis.
yeah,
Thank you, Dennis.
I think it was a good discussion. I think there were, depending on which group you were with, there were a lot of tangent discussions, which I think was probably as important, if not maybe more relevant than the core stuff I was trying to talk about on the comp plans. But I went into it expecting that and hoping that would help or happen. And it wasn't exactly a social hour. I don't think it was a chummy sort of thing. It was definitely important topics that were being talked about. And I think that was, I take that as a big win. And there were a couple comments made afterwards that maybe we do something like that each year. Training sessions plus kind of a more free-form sort of just bringing everybody to talk about whatever might be important to them, so we all understand what's Busco dealing with this year, what South Whitley's dealing with if they have representation, and of course county and city. I serve as liaison among all the boards, but I can only liaison so much. It's much more effective to actually have members talk to each other. So.
And next year there will be the start of a new comprehensive plan for the city, right?
Yes, the mayor has committed funds in the budget, and the city council has adopted funds for, similar to what the county did, a major overhaul of the city's comprehensive plan. Not a complete start from scratch, because it's only been 10 years, but definitely a huge overhaul. Largely because a lot of the major goals have been done or is in progress, and so now it's again, because it's an overall, it's maybe not setting new goals, but taking what we have and what's the next step to those goals. So little different perspective, but we'll see what the initial public input is and adjust going forward. And for what it's worth, Charbusco is also looking at a similar either overhaul or maybe even a start from scratch plan. Theirs is also about 11 years old, but theirs was, they feel a little bit more.
Will it be the same company as last time?
For the city, they're planning on re-engaging American Structure Point, yes. For that reason, because they did the original version. So.
Okay. Very good.
Motion closed.
I second it.
Opposed? Thank you.